So, Valve just put out a big update for the anniversary that makes most of the coming video completely redundant, especially the stuff about when I talk about modding and stuff. So, consider this video pretty outdated, and hopefully, looking past the at least how I played the game this year leading up to making the video, we can get past that and get to the meat of it. And I think the meat of it is the legacy of the game that I really wanted to talk about. So enjoy the second half of the video, I guess, and have a good laugh at the start. So thank you for watching. Half-Life 2 is 20 years old now, so I'm making this video as a thank you to the folks from the Half-Life 2 Episode 2 subforum of the Steam-powered user forums, also known as the Half-Life 2 Episode 3 waiting room. May that site rest in peace. Shoutouts to all of you if you see this. I think I was always interested in playing Half-Life 2 since I saw my dad playing it in his home office every now and then. I remember vividly the school morning, seeing him in his pajamas at his computer, downloading the game on that green Steam interface, and sometime later seeing him blasting dudes in a lighthouse-looking place, the blood splatting on the walls in a pretty scary way for a 13, 14-year-old. I hadn't seen detail in a game like that, but what really got me to more or less beg my dad to let me play Half-Life was seeing the features they were bringing to Half-Life 2 Episode 1. For some reason, my 14-year-old brain was very impressed by the high dynamic range brightness adjusting effects. So I asked my dad, and he said he would buy it on his account and let me play it if I could beat Half-Life and Half-Life 2. Half-Life 1 was an experience in and out of game. It taught me about game patches since I installed it with the original big box CD and had to download the patches from the internet. I don't remember how long it took me to get through, but I remember thoroughly enjoying it. And yes, that includes Zen. I'm a bit of a freak for first-person platforming, it turns out. Half-Life 2 took a bit longer. I had to take a break from it when I got to the entanglement chapter, the second half of Nova Prospect. I got stuck in the last defense encounter and decided to not play it for a while. I printed out a GameFAQs guide at some point, and 6 months later, did that section in one try. I don't remember having issue with any other part of the game. That memory of that part there is the biggest one I have of the whole series. Being stuck for a while and overcoming that. The rest of my memories of the games are pretty vague feelings that I really liked the games at the time in a way that annoyed some of my friends. I hadn't quite found my people yet. In a very wise strategy from my parents, I didn't have open access to the internet at home growing up. So I didn't know about forums or chat rooms or whatever in 2005, 2006. Not until I became an adult after 2008 did I start venturing out there in that wide digital world. I don't remember when or why I joined the Steam-powered user forums. My original account was banned for some silly, careless, and mostly harmless indiscretion on my part. And not remembering makes sense, since the important part is what I ended up doing there and who I'd interact with. It was a place for game likers, very well regulated. Even mentions of 4chan were censored with hard icons like regular profanity. The current Steam community does similar censorship. Long ramble short, I found my people in the Half-Life 2 Episode 2 subforum topic, and they had so much to talk about with regards to Half-Life and Valve in 2008. Every tidbit of announcement was fuel to our discussion fire. There was a pinned thread of Q&A with Mark Laidlaw from various emails folks there had sent him about various lore and writing things. It was fun, and it felt like home. And Valve transitioning over the years to more multiplayer-focused games kind of turned it all foul, on top of us growing up and moving on. Not even Half-Life Alyx really resurrected it, and I don't think a proper monitor game will bring things back as they were. We're all moved on and living full lives, hopefully. with full consequences. Good ones. Anyway, what the point of that history was, so to say, in the spirit of that episode 2 forum, this video is something I would post there to start a discussion about Half-Life 2's legacy. I made a goal to play Half-Life 2 twice this year before the 20-year anniversary. I wanted to play it once, looking and feeling as close to how I played it in 2007 or 8 on my father's account on my old AMD Athlon PC. And the second play would be reasonably modded with mmod, which in my opinion is the way to play Half-Life 2 in modern times. I know there are some who feel that goes against what Valve intends, but consider Half-Life 2 changed a good amount between 2004 and 2007 even. They backported models from Episode 2 to Half-Life 2, notably Alex's model and the Vortigaunts. When they upgraded the engine for a while, the facial animations did not work correctly in subtle ways. So if you hadn't played before, you wouldn't know that they are not emoting as they should and just think that the animations are not good. And they did not fix this for many years. They also redid maps to add their HDR implementation, but didn't do this for every map in the game. So in some maps, there will be a full bright map. Even today, it's not great. So what's the fix? Well, animations we had to wait for. For the other stuff, you have two paths. Modern game player, path 1. You override the HDR maps with the originals you can download from GameBanana.com and turn off the HDR setting. I did this for the first playthrough, as well as add in the original models for the Vortigaunt and Alex. Path 2, a guy named Philip Victor took it upon himself to fix those issues, particularly HDR lighting issues the 2007 Source Engine upgrade introduced, making all the maps in Half-Life 2 have HDR lighting. So for my second playthrough, a modern playthrough, I took that mod as a base. It's called Half-Life 2 Update. You can download it on Steam right now. And then Half-Life 2 Update mmod gets installed into the source mods folder and a few other things. Mark Laidlaw, in answer to some question about the NPC citizens' migrations between in-game cities, said that they'd intended for there to be a lot of languages spoken in City 17, but it came down to budget constraints at the time. Fortunately, in the years since then, the game's voice work has been localized into 7 other languages. Citizen Vocal Diversity mod by Game Banana user The Frankster implements some of these localizations as strategic replacements for some characters in the game. It's really great to see this sort of cut feature make its way back in a way that fits. It doesn't break when a character might need to give you directions as they're still in English. Personally, I would want to make a randomizer to have the language of every NPC you might meet in a map speak something different every time there's a map might load. It wouldn't make perfect sense, but I'd have a good time with it. Citizen vocal diversity hits the sweet spot, and I hope Mark and anyone else that wanted that feature knows about it. So that's all set up, and you know what? Base Half-Life 2, even on hard, is a pretty easy game. The enemy intelligence isn't super good, but the guns punch and the physics is a blast because it gives a lot of tools and encounters to mess with the physics. It feels like they kept all the original Half-Life's weapon archetypes just so it would feel familiar, and then they would build on it with physics and the gravity gun. That's just how a sequel should do. And how does that compare to my mmod setup? They adjusted the gunplay and enemy behavior just enough that it's definitely harder and more satisfying, but doesn't take away from the fun of the physics. The big thing I noticed, though, was the environments and the characters look really great in both setups, the eyes and faces in particular. It's an old game, and a new coat of paint won't really change that creaky feel. That said, I wonder what legacy Half-Life 2 has in the modern age then. What can trace back to Half-Life 2 that is in use today in video games? I have a few thoughts here. Half-Life 2's legacy in gameplay we can trace in two directions: arena first-person shooter combat and scripted story events that happen in real time around the player, with the player in control of the camera. The shooter combat in Half-Life 2 is more or less a holdover from Half-Life 1 and its inspirations, with fun physics attached to it. I've mentioned this before. It's not a shining pillar in that space. Duke Nukem 3D did big boom shoots in a realistic shaped spaces before, and many things since have done better by ignoring Half-Life 2. Unless we look at Attica, an indie game that does advance Half-Life 2's combat formula and physics and completely strips away nearly all the other things Half-Life 2 is remembered for. The characters, the animations, all that. It's pretty lo-fi. It's great for that, though. The cinematic scripted stuff found its place in games like Call of Duty and other games that tried to go full realistic, full life, if you will. Big bombastic set pieces that would fit in the most B-tier action movies, or dialogue sections which break down if the player gets in specific spots. So games that were inspired by Half-Life 2 were restrained the player controlling their position and view of the proceedings. Half-Life 2 refuses to take control from the player, with few exceptions. It doesn't care if you break it. If you don't want to play the role of Gordon in a scene, don't. Issue is, the game doesn't react to those out-of-character behaviors, which is disappointing. You want to play your own part, not the nerdy silent scientist warrior just doing what he's told. Is there ways to get the player to engage in these events so they won't just want to skip them? I think so. Stalker and Metro and the new Wolfenstein solve this by letting you dialogue with other characters, with a voice protagonist. However, with their fixes, there comes compromises. To some, Half-Life 2 features, there's some compromises. Some Half-Life 2 features that I don't think a game has replicated the same way since, like fixed camera positions and taking control from the player, which brings me to the next potential legacy. Sorry, that sentence was freaking mangled. However, with their fixes, there comes compromises, like fixed camera positions and taking control from the player. There's some Half-Life 2 features that I don't think a game has replicated the same way since, which brings me to the next potential legacy. Half-Life 2's legacy in animation is pretty huge, I think. The humans and non-humans move and sound like it could exist in reality. The basic lighting and shaders won't convey perfect realism, but if something moves well in a 3D space, then it does a lot of heavy lifting in graphics place. The peoples in Half-Life 2, in both versions that I played, look so good and track you and other things almost perfectly. Their faces emote in subtle cues that look like they have their own thing going on that you will never know about. I love it. It's probably the biggest pet peeve of mine when games don't get eyes right. Not naming names here, but I think of a big budget game, and do you recall NPCs just staring at nothing, eyes dead in their sockets, even though you're right in front of them? It kills me. You got all that budget for a really pretty game and incredible environment art, and your realistic humans aren't realistically humaning? Now, negativity aside, what games carry Half-Life 2's torch of realism, particularly when it comes to human character animation? Cyberpunk 2077 is probably the answer here. At least it's mine. We're not talking about launch necessarily. And even then, it was probably the answer. There just is not a lot of first-person games out there with characters that will look you right in the viewport. Cyberpunk does. I don't know why I care about the eyes so much, but I do know eyes are what convey a character's approachability and relatability. It's probably the biggest hurdle in the uncanny valley. Do the eyes track right, and do the muscles make the right moves? It's tricky business. Bethesda's work took that torch a bit, but kind of fumbles it with the muscle movements. But their eyes do move well enough, I'm convinced, most of the time. They're fun games. Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2 have really great character faces and animations as well. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is coming soon and is looking to take that torch. If it does better than Half-Life 2 in the character eye tracking department, then I'll put it in Half-Life 2's place in my games of all time list. I promise here now. I'm going to talk now about Half-Life 2's story and characters to build up to the last point I want to make about Half-Life 2's legacy and realism in games. I probably should mention the environment work in Half-Life 2. It's a big part of that game too. It feels like it could be a place that exists, and the characters live in a Tron-like simulation in your computer. Nah, but when I play and I see the story of Kleiner and Vance and the rest working to right the wrong that happened at Black Mesa, it's a hopeful contrast to a lot of stories out there. It's a grim, dark world, but the characters have a professional hope about them. They want to survive and beat their oppressors as much as you, as a player, want to beat the game. Why do they rain so much praise upon you? Because you're giving them everything they're hoping for. You are doing a good job. Now, would it be interesting if it were an RPG where you could make mistakes, kill the wrong dude, and get everyone mad? Sure, I'd play the heck out of that. Half-Life 2 has a hope for humanity. It cares a lot about humanity, and it tries to convey that through its realistic systems of animation, environment detail, and physics, and character work, animation, and acting, and allowing the player to have control. So, who inherits this legacy, and what has attempted to take that whole idea on in the 20 years since Half-Life 2? Cyberpunk 2077 is a 2020 game with a 2023 relaunch and DLC that is very concerned with the realistic, albeit futuristic environments with very good graphically looking humans. The story is concerned with the plight of the people and their lives in Night City. The vast majority of objectives in Cyberpunk involve you helping someone in their life situation, but you can mess up and there are consequences. Now that I'm thinking of it, Cyberpunk should probably have Half-Life 2's place in my games of all time list. It even has more cars, so anyway, yes, that's one game that takes a lot of what Half-Life 2 does with regards to how it treats humanity and amps it up. The other game I think of is the Talos Principle 2 in from 2023. The Talos Principle 2 from 2023. I'm not sure there's a game more concerned with humanity's purpose. The story involves a new city of human-brained robots trying to build a new civilization after all the flesh humans died and only left their libraries and their robot progeny. 1,000 robots in this city deliberating professionally together on how to do it. The game is gorgeous in Unreal Engine 5. You're solving three-dimensional puzzles, environment puzzles out there in very naturalistic environments with giant megastructures built on top of them. You debate with your fellow robots on what should be done with particular things about the city, particular technologies, and how this new humanity should progress, if they should progress at all. There is a near zero violence in this game compared to Half-Life 2 and Cyberpunk 2077, which are hyper violent. I don't want to spoil much of these, but suffice to say, I can feel one of their common ancestors being Valve's sophomore game product. The themes of humanity grappling with taking care of the earth and each other would be cheapened if it wasn't in a hyper-realistic looking world, I think. So where does that leave me 20 years since I saw my dad play Half-Life 2, 16 since I played myself and started discussing it myself? I think there's a very wide world of games out there, but there's nothing quite exactly like Half-Life 2, for good and bad. Half-Life 2's dedication to realism in humans and environments to convey a story of hope for humanity and faith in science comes at cost of gunplay and enemy behaviors that could have been more fun and engaging than its predecessor. Half-Life can never be completely realistic because it wants to be a fun game, but also put you in a world with characters you feel are real. Half-Life can only be just that. Thanks for watching.
I'm Alex Vance. My father worked with you back in Black Mesa. I'm sure you don't remember me, though. Man, a few words, aren't you? Remember him from Black Mesa? Your old administrator. Don't get my dad started on Dr. Breen. Through here.